Number 6, current business discussion and possible action on a sign permit request for Eric Cook. The applicant is Greenman Landscape, West 240, South 6103, Highway 164. Jamie, is this where the lights should be dimmed?
Actually, I unplugged, so. They wish to install a freestanding pole sign along 164 advertising their business. The sign display area is 4 foot by 8 foot, so 32 square feet. It will be double-sided, so it'll be 64 square feet. On the application, they identified that it would be made of a wood material and it would be externally illuminated. And in your packet, they have a drawing of it. If the board so chooses tonight, I provided a recommendation for approval of the sign. And they're the standard conditions that we've been using.
Thank you.
That's it.
Make a motion to approve their sign.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Sign permit request for My Guy Auto, owner is Jay Sindig. We tabled the conditional use. Would it be the board's decision to also table this to the next plan commission meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
October 10th.
We gotta address the whole thing with planning commission again.
Right, but it's October 10th on board agenda. And I'm Mr. First and Second, sorry.
Mike and Larry.
Nancy and Larry.
Mike and Larry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
C, application for planning commission agenda and memorandum of understanding for professional staff services. This was held over from our last meeting primarily to look at the language the language that was in the memorandum of understanding so that folks were clear about what they were going to be spending, or a range of what they were going to be spending.
I'll make a motion to approve the use of the MOU, but I'd like to have discussion on it if somebody seconds my motion.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
Hector, have you had a moment to review this?
Yes, I have. And again, in the course of the discussion that I alluded to previously, I have spoken to the planner on my own nickel, and I have some thoughts to share with you. Previously, there was some question as to whether the town's approach in collecting fees was unique amongst towns, and quite frankly, there were different opinions that were expressed, so I asked my legal assistant to do a current survey of the 11 towns in the city of Waukesha in the county, so that as you go through this process, you have complete information again on our nickel. And the observation that I can make and share with you is that every single town in the county and an ordinance that basically obligates someone who comes in and is asking for a planning application to be processed, which could be as simple as rezoning in some cases where circumstances have changed dramatically, to something more complicated and controversial, such as the Walgreen project. And in most of the communities, there is a protocol that is followed, not unlike what we have been following here. And that is, the applicant comes in, the applicant is given a copy of the form and is told that there will be basic fees that will have to be paid just for the submission of the application, and that there will be an obligation to pay for any associated professional services that will be incurred. And by and large, as the planner and I discussed, most of these situations are fairly routine. I would say 90% would be on the high side, 80%, 70% would be my experience. And the area that I have some concern about is a situation where you have someone attempting to develop property or bring about a change, and for reasons that are beyond the town's control, either the lack of financing on the part of the individual, the downturn in the economy, or whatever, the process does not move smoothly. It takes a number of months, perhaps a couple of years, as we have currently with the Fred Lathers property that's been under consideration. And in those situations, it's very difficult to give people a reasonable estimate of what the upside is going to be. And so the discussion that was had previously was a discussion along the lines of, well, perhaps maybe there could be a stoppage of the work until more money is paid. You do have in your ordinance language that allows you to collect an upfront deposit for a bond. And if you look at the Town of Eagle, item number 3, share this with the plan.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. They require every applicant to make an $1,100 deposit. They draw against that. From my point of view, I think that is not really appropriate for the level of development that I have seen in the time that I have been here as town attorney. I think that the situations where there has been less of controversy with regards to fees has been brought about by situations where communities basically request some small deposit, say $500, and that is monitored on a monthly basis, as most consultants will submit their invoices monthly. And as that amount is reduced beyond a certain threshold, the clerk notifies the applicant or representative that the fund, the balance should be replenished, and you have a meaningful level of exchange of information and awareness of what is being done. Looking at this form, I think that it would be appropriate to make sure that the representations made by the applicant be submitted in some written fashion at the time of the initial meeting with the planner. I do not think that it's necessary that the attorney be in attendance at the initial meeting with the planner. And perhaps for that matter, the engineer, but that's a matter of policy that you might want to implement. But having said that, from my point of view, it's very difficult to give an estimate on an amount of work to be done, sight unseen and not understanding the particular circumstances involved. So I would suggest that you have, instead of a minimum deposit, have no maximum amount, but that you implement a protocol of having a monthly accounting submitted to the applicant so that the work can continue and so that you avoid situations where you're really forcing the professional who really has no contract with the applicant and is really rendering services to you to interact with the applicant to get money out of that applicant for something that the applicant is receiving in his or her interaction with the town. I would recommend that it be the town's responsibility to follow up on that because those records really are maintained by the town. And there may be some situations where the town, in a particular situation in response to a notice of claim, for example, for a presentation such as that which Mr. Morgan Butler made, the town may want to engage professionals in rendering some advice that isn't strictly advancing the application as such, but it's part of the process of dealing with the assertion being made. Because it is not uncommon in the development arena for developers, particularly sophisticated developers, to utilize the services of attorneys and suggest to governing bodies that if a particular course of action isn't taken, the alternative that might be followed will be litigation. I just had a situation recently in another community where a conditional use permit was applied for by basically an interstate developer. Approximately 11 months later, the project was well underway. They were trying to lock in financing. This was a conditional use permit that was negotiated with the developer's law firm, which was Foley and Lardner. They had agreed to these things, and because the bank took issue with some of those provisions, they wanted to change it. And they basically dropped on the community 2 briefs that said that if there weren't meeting of the mind reached, that there would be litigation. That community had to incur time and effort to assess that. And in that particular situation, there was a resolution. But those are situations that can't be anticipated by giving an estimate. And those are situations where you will have to decide whether you want to pass on the charge. By including the range here, you're perhaps putting on the table an issue that you shouldn't pose because there may be an assertion by someone, particularly someone who is new in the business or has not really done business in this community, to assert that that was really the range and anything beyond that is unreasonable. And it is true, as it has been represented in these discussions, that some communities, for example, the city of Waukesha, they don't require any kind of deposit, but uniformly, or payment for reimbursement professional staff. But they have their own mechanism for recovering those costs. In one community, as you may see here, they basically charge the town of Brookfield. In their ordinance, copy of which I have here, and I'd be happy to pass that along, I have a compilation of all of the materials. They charge 1% of the total project value as their overhead charge. And the very first step that they take is they basically submit all the plans to their engineering firm. They come up with a value for the improvements, and they charge 1%. And that's how they recover the money. The point being that towns look at development in a very different way, in that they are in the business of promoting some development, but at the same time, they don't want to burden all of the town residents simply because someone is attempting to develop a particular business, that cost should be borne by the applicant. So I think that the draft is a good start. I think that there are some modifications that could be made from a verbiage standpoint, but I think that the town might be better served in the long run to approach this in a more general fashion, rather than pinning itself down to a particular range. And as you can see, also in this chart, the fees that the town charges are extremely reasonable. You see communities that charge $195 an hour for legal fees. The engineering, planning fees are considerably higher. So it's a situation that can be managed by having monthly accounting given to the applicant, and that way the matter proceeds in an orderly and quick fashion.
I have a couple of questions, Hector, and thank you for the time and effort you put into that. The two-sided handout you gave here, obviously somebody's put a lot of time and effort, your assistant, in putting that together. Wonder if you could just help translate that for me a bit. There's, what, 12 communities on there, including our own town of Waukesha. Can you tell me, just go right down the line, help me interpret this, of these communities, which ones would charge the entirety of any legal expenses back to the applicant? Can you identify those for me, please?
All of them. And you could confirm that by
So
looking
all
at
of them charge all of the attorney's fees back in
Yes.
entirety? Okay.
Yeah. Well, they reserve in their documents the forms. You'll see the forms that they use. They reserve the right to charge all of the fees.
Well, that's a little different question.
Well, I can't tell you specifically whether 100% of the time all of these communities charge that.
So you don't know the answer to the question?
Yeah, specifically, no.
Okay, thank you. And I've got,
Legally, they.
I understand the legal part. I'm asking as a practical matter.
Yeah.
Let me go at a question in a little bit different way. If we look at the schedule before us, I'm going to give you, and I guess Jamie maybe too, but something that isn't a complete hypothetical here. I'm going to take something fairly close to home. I and others have office property in the town of Waukesha. If I have got 700 square foot tenant space and insurance agent A moves out and insurance agent B moves in, I'm assuming that either the tenant or I as the landlord or anybody else in that instance needs to come to the town of Waukesha, Town Plan Commission, Town Board, get a plan of operation, submitted and approved. Fair so far? Yes? Maybe not?
If you have a one-for-one exchange, you may not need to, but
Okay, and my question, the reason I'm asking, I'm not trying to pit you guys against one another, but What would I expect, if your answer is yes, what would somebody expect to have to pay for that? You're gonna fill one of these out for me. What's that one-for-one exchange going to cost me as the landlord of my tenant?
According to the application fee schedule, in my mind, if it's a change in tenant, it's a change in use of the space. So it would require a plan of operation, which the application fee is $200 plus any professional services.
$200, that's an original, not the amendment one? If I just got one tenant moving out, another coming in?
If the tenant that was originally there has a plan of operation and you have an insurance company moving out and an insurance company moving in that has the same number of employees, same hours of operation, then yes, maybe you can
Well,
do
let's
an
say they got
amendment.
one more employee, so then I'm at the $200?
Yes.
All right, and then the back of this, what are you gonna plug in there for the engineer, the planner, and the attorney?
The attorney probably would not have a review, the town engineer would not have a review, it would be town planner, and it might be another $100 to $200 based on the information that's
And I
supplied.
guess I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna put this in real context, if I come in with that and I've got simply somebody vacating a 700-foot tenant space and somebody moving right back in, and you tell me that could cost somebody $400, maybe you think that's on the cheap, but that's a lot of money. For something as simple as that?
Well, no question that it is a lot of money, but the real question is, who's to pay for that? The individual who is affected in a singular fashion, or the rest of the community? That's the policy decision you have to make in adopting this procedure, and it's something that's done differently in each community.
And I understand that part of the question. Mine is, that's a lot of money for something that simple, for somebody moving out and somebody moving in.
I think let's get back to this document. This document, what we're talking about here is what's in yellow. Do we want to have ranges for the town attorney, town engineer, the town planner? Do we want to range those items? And I think that the question for Hector was, do we want to do that? You seem to think that we would be putting ourselves in a legal position if we do that. Jamie, is this done in other communities? And if so, how often do you utilize that?
It is. What you see before you is very similar to what your neighbor to the south uses, which I represent. As Hector had mentioned in the conversation we had earlier, it works 90 to 95% of the time for your accessory buildings, your sign requests, your plans of operation. However, we do vary or deviate from this process when you have a large development. Most communities, what they do is they'll do a development review team meeting where they'll probably pull in the chairman, a couple supervisors, and all of the town staff if we're looking at a 400 lot subdivision, or if we're looking at a Walmart or a Walgreens. And in that case, sometimes the communities might want to do a escrow fee, because Hector is correct. It could be a 2-year process. It's very hard for us as consultants to figure out how much time we're going to have in reviewing engineering fees, stormwater management, architectural drawings. But this here, it gets that 90 to 95% complete. As far as the application fees, I had just put out some figures. I sat down with Jamie and her staff, and we fine-tuned this, because this is what I was led to believe is what's costing the town in paper, time, publishing, getting the meetings, agendas and that. So, I mean, I understand where Supervisor Fisher's coming from, but we're just at a point now in the economy where it costs money to develop. It's just, that's the bottom line.
And I don't have any problem with the larger developments. If you're doing a 400-unit subdivision, you know that you're going to be spending a great deal of money on
Right.
engineering and legal fees and planning fees and so forth.
We put this system in draft form. We put it in play Wednesday. We had an applicant come in, Mr. Smart. He wants to put in a driveway. I had looked at it on Tuesday evening, realized that it wasn't a planning matter, it was an engineering matter. I contacted Jamie, Jamie called in Chris. Chris and I sat down with the property owner, we found out he's gotta put in 2 new culverts. He's putting in a retaining wall on both sides of his driveway and that. We went through the application process with them. Chris went away, did some quick calculations, sent them an email and says it's gonna cost anywhere between $400 and $600 for him to review it. So far, it seems like Mr. Smart is comfortable with the process that we're doing. And it was just kind of a quick practice that we utilized.
Making the assumption, I guess the bottom line question is making the assumption that these fees are accurate with regards to costs and what it costs the town to procure services from our professionals as well as the office staff. Are we comfortable with the range? And if not, do we send Jamie back to the drawing board and redraft this in a different format?
My only comment, I like the range. I think it is a friendlier way to advise individuals to what they might be seeing here. I would like, in some language, to say that if we're going to exceed our range, it talks about there's gonna be a contact made by the particular party that you've now discovered that it's gonna cost $600 more because it's an engineering issue. I think there has to be some mechanism, because now we've got, I'm Joe homeowner and I think I've got this range, and now you change it, and I might say yes, but from a town liability standpoint, we have nothing that really reaffirms that the person said, yeah, go ahead with that. I think there has to be some mechanism that they
In
agree
writing.
in writing in some capacity to be revised.
Would you be comfortable with something very simple like an email exchange, or would you want it
If
more
it's
formal?
if it's an identifiable, I mean, we accept that in banking, if it's an identifiable email, you know, Joe Bansky at joebansky.com, and you know, who sent that, right?
So with that amendment, that there would be a contact made by the professional that is perhaps going to exceed the estimates?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve this with that kind of language inserted, that there's some type of written verification of acceptance of any revision that happened with regard to that footnote 1 consistent.
Is there a second? I'll second. Further discussion?
I guess the only comment I'll make, I'll vote to support the motion, but I really have great concerns about this process. I guess let's see how it works. So I'll support it, but I really have great concerns about it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
It was an amendment to the document. I don't think you were making an amendment to the motion. He was making an amendment to the document.
Oh, good.
Modify.
Thanks.
60, Five Diamonds Inc. Two separate sections here, disputed invoices. This was requested by Tony Bryant, who's with us tonight. The former town planner is not here. I don't think anybody posed any questions to him and has anything in writing. Would that be accurate? And the land use amendment, again with Tony Bryant. Tony Bryant had contacted the town. He wanted to, he's a distinguished member of the community, both from a professional and a community service standpoint, and would like to bring some closure to a long-standing irritation for both the town, residents, owners of the ballpark, and see if we can't come to some resolution, get the land use amendment done, get the disputed invoices settled, and put this thing to bed once and for all. Mr. Bryant's here with us this evening. Thank you for coming.
Tony Bryant, I live at 108 North Barstow Street in the city of Waukesha. But I have some standing here to be a spokesperson for Five Diamonds because I am one of the minority shareholders of the operation. And I appreciate the opportunity to explain why we have some objections to the remaining balance that is outstanding. It came about because of the temporary occupancy permits that were being granted as the construction of the park continued. And it went over an extended period, I think it was at least a year, in the process of getting it built. And I should just remind everyone that Five Diamonds did pay extensive funds to the town to get this development completed. There was over $10,000 in impact fees that was paid right at the get-go back in December of 2010. Subsequently, we paid out about $22,000 in the regular town fees that are normal for this kind of development. So we do have a lot of money paid out to the town, and that's a normal expectation. But what was going on was we were getting these temporary occupancy permits, and the town planner would be directed to come out and inspect, and then come with some more concerns about what needed to be done. You know, he would approve what we had already done, but then he'd go back and have to write a report to present to the board, and there would be a charge applied for the professional time involved and for the travel time out to the Five Diamonds grounds. And this went on for some period of time, and that's how these funds accrued, these expenses accrued to around $9,000 or slightly over. Now the outstanding balance is down to $5,851.37 to be exact. The reason for that is we had applied a cash bond of $2,700 to assure the town that we would complete the landscaping. And that money was to come back when the landscaping was done. And if you've been out there recently, you'll see that all of the shrubs that we lost last year in last year's drought have all been replaced, and things seem to be going along very well now. Also, we had to pay a cash bond of just about $1,000 for a culvert, and all of these were to be paid back, and they have been paid back. But what's been happening is they have applied these refunds to the outstanding balance of the $9,000, which gets it down to the $5,851 figure that's still hanging out there and is causing this disagreement. We really want to get this resolved. We want to get we got the zoning approved as a park and rec entity. We want to get the master land use plan approved by this board so that it can be forwarded to the county, and we can go on with our respective lives and get this behind us. And what we found in looking at the rules of the town is that the building inspector is charged with the responsibility of doing the inspections at no cost to the developers. And what we were being billed for the town planner to come out there, and he wasn't really supposed to be doing the inspection. The building inspector does that at no charge to the developer, and he ultimately issues the occupancy permit. So that's really the reason why we were taking exception to this $9,000 charge. And I think in all fairness, you know, we don't want to get into a lawsuit. In my business experience, I always try to avoid getting into lawsuits and paying a lot of lawyers, excuse me, Hector, but I'd rather avoid that if at all possible. And I think I'm speaking for the shareholders that if the town would be willing to expunge the 58, 51. You know, we really think we have the 9,000 coming back, but let's just walk away and get on with our lives. And if you would do that, we will, you know, we can finish this out and get the master land use plan forwarded to the county, and we can all go our way. And believe me, this development has been a wonderful thing for the town. I think what everyone is realizing that it's only a 5-month operation. The 7 months, it's dark, it's not bothering anybody. We've done the best we can to adjust the lights and all of these things. But it's much better having us out there where 1,400 kids and 1,000 families are enjoying the use of this, and we've got teams coming in from Texas and from North Carolina, and they love it. They absolutely fall in love with what they've found there. And so I think it's a real positive for the town, and certainly a lot better than it might have been if it were a shopping center or something like that. So that is my statement.
Thank you. The hope was that there's been a fair amount of personalities that have clashed in the past. And the hope was that with some cooler heads and some reasonableness brought to the town board, that perhaps we could put this thing to bed once and for all this evening. And that's why Mr. Bryant is here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I speak?
Sure.
I think Mr. Bryant deserves a response to his inquiry as to why, perhaps if he could be given a copy of this email, as to why the planner was involved in the process of following up on this. I believe that Mr. Fisher appropriately raised this question some meetings ago with regards to the issuance of a temporary occupancy permit, and why was the planner involved in that process. And I went back into my files to double check my recollection. And what basically is, and this confirms my recollection, what basically happened was that the structural modifications within the jurisdiction of the building inspector were effectively accomplished. But then in July of last year, Mr. DeLacy, who was involved in transitioning as inspector and then planner as the process went forward, he wrote to one of your other shareholders, perhaps both of them, Tom and Lisa Kelnick, in which he said, "I reviewed the attached temporary occupancy permit. There are no building code issues listed in the conditional temporary occupancy for Martin or myself to inspect. The items listed are planning items, and Roger is the town planner now and would be the one to verify compliance for those items." And that is my understanding as to why he was involved. That's the extent of my...
Well, that's fine, but he still has no authority to be involved, because our town ordinances do not speak to that, and Tom DeLacy had signed off on an occupancy permit prior to this, so that's fine, but, and we're not trying to argue about this. This has been argued up and down, left and right, for years. Let's put it to bed. Let's see if cooler heads can prevail, and that we can come to some resolution between the Five Diamonds ownership and this board, and move forward.
Jamie Cooksound, if I could ask a question, who determines that when our planner, whether it's our new planner or our old planner, does work for somebody and they get a chargeback, who makes that determination? Is that you? Is it the planner?
Well, the planner puts it on there as to be reimbursed on
So-
their billings. It's actually typically separated out.
So when you get that bill, it's separated out, and you believe that our planner, I mean, Yeti Coley's a big company, you would have expected that they were billing in good faith, that they believed that the services they were doing were to promote the project, and that the project, whether it's owner or a company, was participating in that, and understood that process.
Correct. They had the general billing, just as the AV Coley billings were, and then the separate ones would be the ones to be billed back.
And they got billings, you submit an invoice to, whether it's Price Plumbing or Five Diamonds or whomever, you submit an invoice to them monthly, quarterly, annually? What's the process by us sending?
To be
them?
done monthly with the attached document from the engineer, the planner, and then the area from the attorney if there is billing back from them.
To the best of your recollection, what was the first time that this petitioner, this requester complained about and objected to the bills that were being submitted to them?
I don't recall the exact date.
Well, a year ago,
Sure.
were
I
they, do they go
honestly-
back to the date that they got them? I mean, when I get a bill, I just had IT work done, the guy billed me for 4 hours, he only had the thing for an hour and a half. I called him the day the bill showed up. That's me, not saying that that's what other people need to do, but was this a delayed process, or was this relatively?
Some of it was
quick?
delayed, some of the billings that were given to Mr. Kelnick were delayed. But as far as the date, I really don't recall.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I could speak to a couple of things, and it is time to move on. I'm going to take a brief step back for a moment or two. To be candid about this whole matter, there's plenty of players in it, but the town of Waukesha's hands are not clean. This has not been our finest hour. The conditional use permit for this project was issued by the Plan Commission, or recommended by the Plan Commission, and adopted by the then present town board in April of 2011. The town board had not even forwarded the conditional use permit to the Five Diamonds people as of early 2012. It was 9 or 10 months later. I served on the board at that time, and some of my fellow board members decided to attempt to change the language of the conditional use permit at that point in time. I stomped my feet about that and said, no, that's wrong. The town board issued the conditional use permit in April of 2011. You can't come back 9 or 10 months later and start adding, strengthening conditions. If you want to revisit it and reopen it, that's a prerogative not to do it. It was almost a year until that conditional use permit was put in place. And that a little bit set the tone for what was to follow. The temporary occupancy permit was issued in April of 2012. I didn't bring the copy of it here, but that is 4 or 5 places in our town ordinances. That is the responsibility of the town building inspector. There's not even any place in the town of Waukesha Code of Ordinances, to the best of my knowledge, that it even talks about a town planner, let alone what the town planner's responsibilities are. And the primary purpose of that occupancy permit is safety, health, and general welfare of the people. That occupancy permit was temporarily issued and reissued in July, August, and November of 2012. And each time the conditions were complied with by the petitioner, the town added new conditions. It's analogous to crossing the goal line, but saying you didn't score a touchdown, we're going to move the goal line back. I've spoken about this for over a year. My perspective is that is abuse of authority, abuse of regular authority on the part of the town of Waukesha. It's just that simple. I've been for over 35 years involved in building design and construction throughout the state of Wisconsin. I have never seen anything come close to that. The last time it was, the issues, the occupancy permit was denied in November, and the temporary occupancy permit was reissued, was to replace a handful of dead arborvitae bushes, 6, I think, and the town of Waukesha was still sitting on this landscaping bond for between $2,000 and $3,000. That's an abuse of regulatory authority. It's in violation of our ordinances to have the town planner involved in that part of the process. And this is what precipitated and generated all of these bills. The 27th of June, I was on site. Planner Dubler did not show up. We did the site visits to the neighbors. The lighting issues were satisfactorily resolved at that point in time. We went for months after that belaboring that issue to generate all of these bills. So my perspective on this is quite simple. I mean, now we're to the point that the town, again, and I think it is abusing its authority to try to withhold approval of the land use plan. The rezoning of that property was recommended by the Town Planning Commission, 6-0. Approved by the town board 4-1. And shame on us a bit on the process. We probably should have done this land use amendment at the same time. We didn't. It's housekeeping. The Town Plan Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval of the land use plan. This town board voted 3-2 to deny it over the dispute of these contested invoices. Again, from my perspective, that's wrong. I believe it's abuse of regulatory authority, and I think it's time to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I think the goal of this evening was not to debate that. I think the 5 people up here can agree to disagree. There is a fair amount of animosity between the board, 5 Diamonds, former board members. Let's put all that aside. I don't think that we want to re-debate and rehash any of this, any of the nonsense that's gone on over the last couple of years. Can these 5 board members come to an agreement with the owners of 5 Diamonds, and specifically Mr. Bryant, and a cooler head, and prevail, move forward, come to an agreement, and close this chapter, this very embarrassing chapter of the town of Waukesha? Is there room for that this evening without further debating about what we should have done or shouldn't have done and who should have done it? Can we move past all of that and just come to closure?
So if we think that some of these bills are appropriate and that they are money owed to the town, I'm an inconsiderate, cold-hearted jerk, is what I heard you say.
Negative. You did not hear me say inconsiderate, cold-hearted,
Well, you didn't use
or
those
jerk.
words, but you certainly
What I said was,
painted a picture
can't
that I
we
wouldn't have a
come,
cooler head.
couldn't we come to some agreement with the owners of 5 Diamonds? Is there any room on this board of 5 to come to an agreement to put this thing to bed?
So they had an annual review, which is described by their conditional use permit. The annual review had a posting, it had an inspection, it had a $785 bill. This was in the original cut. They're objecting to that bill. I can't see anything in here that would determine that this is a frivolous or abuse of authority, or if this was a described process in the conditional use permit that they agreed to. From August of 2012.
Okay, so Mr. Bryant, are you aware, is that one of the disputed bills? Do you have a list of the disputed bills?
I do not have a list, I just
Fair
have a
enough.
It's
total.
one of the unpaid
Oh.
invoices based on what Jamie has given to us, Jamie Salentine, our clerk. So I'm assuming that you've paid the invoices or applied the credits, 10,080 to the bills that you didn't dispute. Because you said these are the bills and you gave the amount, but these are the bills that you dispute. This is one of those bills.
The
Hold on a
number
second,
was
Joe, there was a
somewhat over
payment on that.
9,000.
Right, there was $109.49 on a $784.49 bill. We're owed $675 from that particular invoice.
All right, well, hold on a second, let's determine. Which bills, Joe, when you went through this with Mr. Kilnick some time ago, I don't know how long ago,
On
you
March
determined?
13th, I sat with Greg Beatty and Tom Kelnick and went bill at a time. And there were some bills that they disputed. Most of those bills were a result of an agreed-upon meeting that took place in November after they attempted to annex and take their property into the city. Chairman Van Sock reached out to your attorney, Stephen Tadalski, I believe is his name, and made a offer to sit down with the developer, the clients, and kind of put a relationship back together if that's possible. Mr. Tukalski sent an email that I saw that said, yes, we'd love to do that. I took part in that meeting, as did yourself, right? And we sat down, there were a number of us around the table, and we had what I thought was meaningful discussion about ways to resolve some of the conflict that was within the remaining of the project. Now, I will tell this entire room that I disagree with the structure of those bills that came from that meeting being applied to you. I think that the preparation work that our attorney did to be prepared for that meeting, the preparation work that our planner did to be prepared for that meeting, that didn't, in my opinion, just mine, promote your project to a further completion. It was work that our experts were doing to be prepared to have a meeting with you, and I think that's something that we should absorb. And I said as much to Tom and Greg back on March 13th.
Joe, do you have
Still
a,
feel that way.
Joe, do you have a total of the bills that you, when you went through them with Mr. Kelnick and Mr. Beatty, do you have a total of bills that you feel aren't appropriate for them to pay? Is there some amount that you have?
When we met, I still have the exact invoices that Jamie gave to me to sit down with Tom and Greg. I have some notes written on them. I have not said, geez, I think this is appropriate, that one's not. At one point during the meeting, I recall saying that I agree with some of the bills that you're saying you have objection to, and you should come to the town board, because I can't decide, I can't say, hey, geez, Tom, Greg, I agree with you, but that should be an internally assessed bill. You unfortunately gotta come to the board, and the board's gotta make that decision. And, with the election, I brought that issue back up, and we came to that point in time, and from my recollection, the stack of bills that were objected to went from a relatively small stack to the entire amount. And that's where, to be quite honest, that's where I'm like, some of these invoices are real charges. We go around and around about, hey, the planner shouldn't have done this. We don't even have a town planner based on our ordinances. They're just inadequate.
Again, we're getting into debating.
But I'm not debating.
Well,
I
basically,
think there is a middle ground
I
here.
just want to make sure that everybody understands that without getting into a lot of detail, that we're already trying to compromise this, that we think 9,000 was kind of the number that we thought was an overcharge, but it's down now to 5,600, and so, or 58.
We missed one, we missed someplace between you and between Five Diamonds and Clerk Salentine, we missed one. The total, folks, is 610437 that is currently outstanding.
There's
Is-
one for Deerfield Estates, the 253, that's,
Oh,
it's
okay.
up on
I
top.
didn't.
That's okay.
So is there, I'll ask again, without debating this, is there Is there a way that we can put this to bed? Is there a offer of compromise that as a representative of Five Diamonds, you can bring to us this evening that we could possibly confer and agree on?
Well, basically, that's my offer, is that we walk at the number that it is now, 6,000, whatever it is. That it's come down from the 9, we're not claiming the 2,700 cash bond or the $1,000 cash bond that has been credited against this outstanding bill. We would just like to say, okay, let's agree to walk now and expunge the 6,000, whatever it is, and let's finalize everything and move on.
Jamie,
As playing hopefully a potential mediator here, and it's not necessarily the role that I should be playing, but as a mediator, I'm gonna tell you that I don't see a lot of hope in you guys walking out of here tonight with us getting hung for a $6,100 bill. Is there middle ground between us? Is there something other than that? Is there? And I'm not telling you that I've talked to these guys that they're gonna agree to it. I don't know that you'll agree to it. If we split it, if it was 40%, if it was 60%, I don't know what that number is. I don't know what that middle ground is. But I'm gonna tell you, looking over at some of the faces to my left, I find it very unlikely that we're gonna leave with smiling faces here tonight, and Five Diamonds leaving with a.
Well, you know, I read in the newspaper that Mr. Bansky indicated that some invoices were not properly billed, and you're actually saying that right now. So, I mean, listen, I'll pay the difference if there's some number. If you want to cut it in half, I'll pay the half that you're not willing to cover, and whatever works for you guys. I understand you have to do all this in a public hearing where everybody's standing around here, and you can't make any private deals in the back room. I understand that. So if you want to make it that we pay something out of that 6,000, I'll personally pay it just to get this thing done.
Gentlemen, is there room here for, if that's an offer for Mr. Bryant to split this thing and put it to bed, is there any agreement here that we could do that this evening?
John, I'm concerned with the $6,100 number. Last I was told or knew, we were somewhere around 13,000. I don't even know how we got to 61,000.
So there was a couple of checks that were paid, number one. Number two, we offset the $2,700 landscaping bill along with the $1,000 culvert bill. And the numbers are the numbers, Mike. I mean, you can't, Clerk Salentine has everything
What
accurate.
does offset mean, John?
That means that if they were owed $10,000 and we owed them, anybody, you asked what an offset is, I'm giving you the definition of an offset. If somebody's owed $10,000 and the opposite party owes them $5,000 and you offset that, that would mean that there's $5,000 left to be owed from party A to party B.
Okay, does that, in the 40 years coming up in November 1st that I've been in this town, loving every minute of it, I have never, I repeat, never heard of any disagreement to this magnitude from any developer, resident. I can honestly state that I was a town chair from 97 to 99. We provided service much like we do today. Things haven't changed in that respect. And by golly, people were very, very happy with our service, and they paid for our service, John. I can't say enough about that. It's got to give us a warm and comfortable feeling. All of a sudden, with Five Diamonds issue, it's a problem. I'm having a problem with that. To put my fiduciary duties aside, I don't feel comfortable about that one bit. That's the way I feel, and that's the statement I'm making.
Fair enough, I appreciate that. The numbers, to clarify, the numbers are the numbers. Clerk Salentine has an accurate accounting of what is owed, what has been paid, what has been offset. And even Supervisor Bansky agrees, some of the bills have been inappropriately assessed for the ballpark. And again, we find some middle ground and move on.
In the interest of doing that, if you'll agree to pay $3,000, I'll make a motion to, let's get this thing done and move it on. You pay $3,000, we'll eat the balance and waive it. The only clarification I would ask is Attorney DeLamora, do we have to do something to make sure this doesn't set some kind of a precedent, or is there a process by which a municipality has to go through to do this?
I'll second the motion.
No, there is no set process. I would recommend, however, that there be a mutual release executed between Five Diamonds and the town, so that there be no claim brought at any point for any past professional services.
I would make a simple amendment then to the motion, and the amendment would be that Hector DeLamora crafts a mutual release between both parties that's acceptable to both sets of attorneys.
I'll second your amendment.
Well, you're approving my amendment. You have to vote on the amendment first. Okay?
It's a non-debatable amendment.
It's a non-debatable amendment, so let's just vote on the amendment.
I know what John's. You second?
I seconded John's amendment. I made the first motion to settle the outstanding balance.
I got that Fisher.
And
Brian
Brian
seconded
seconded.
it. I made the amendment, can't be seconded.
For the amendment, for Attorney Hector to draft the release. Supervisor Bansky?
Yes.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Supervisor Laska?
What are we voting on, please?
The amendment for Attorney DeLamora to draft a mutual release between the parties.
Oh,
Only to draft a release?
At this point, the motion on the floor is to simply draft for Attorney DeLamora to draft a release to our next vote, which would be the potential agreement, if the board supports it, to settle the balance for $3,000 from it. So this vote is just on the Attorney DeLamora to draft the language.
Supervisor Laska?
no.
Chairman Marek?
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf?
Motion passes. We're going back to the original motion then, with the amendment, yeah.
Are we discussing yet?
Yeah.
Sure.
What, okay, so, what is our total at now then?
610427.
Right.
37.
This is the,
Mr. Bryant is picking up 3,000, we're picking up 310437.
because Brian looks even numbers.
I'm happy.
Question maybe for Jamie, please. If you could look up some invoices, I want to see if they were paid.
It's all on the list for you. Okay.
not on
What
my
invoice
list.
number?
Do you have your spreadsheet? Maybe
Invoice.
Maybe you could, hold on a second, Mike.
Sure.
We've got a
Sure.
spreadsheet for you. These are the invoices that are open.
No, those are closed.
These are closed, and some of these are open. So this is all.
I have that piece of paper, John.
Okay, so what's your question?
I've got some other invoices that I believe are open, and that's why I would like recognition on this, please.
Okay. Go ahead.
Invoice 10072. Should be in your computer, Jamie.
Yeah, it's 10072.
Yes.
It's showing that on your list in front, it's showing paid in full. It was originally under Deerfield because of how it was paid. I needed to move it back into the 5 diamond section in order to
Okay.
clear it out of QuickBooks.
How much was paid, please?
$357.50.
And the date it was paid, please?
It would have been with the check on August 14th, or with the credit memo that we applied from
August.
landscaping and, or the ditch deposit.
Okay, August 14th, you know what? I've seen nothing on that. Okay, let's go on. March, invoice number 10045, please.
That one was paid. Its remaining balance, as stated in the sheet, is showing $162.50. Because
So-
of that, Naturescape was in there inadvertently.
Naturescape? Okay. And it was transferred to Naturescape? Do they still owe the money?
Correct. It was an engineering bill, and we had the clarification from the engineer billing, and that was not their bill originally, and it was given to 5 Diamond, so it was removed and then placed back to Naturescape as an invoice and placed back into the QuickBooks system, so they have it now.
So Naturescape owes us 13 and change, maybe 1,400.
Correct.
Okay. And one more, or 2 more invoices,
Okay.
please. 10054.
Sure. That one was also considered paid in full because the amount that they paid of $2,156.75, the 5 Diamonds paid. Of that, there was an incorrect billing to Naturescape on lot number 3 of $393.33, and again, that was moved to another invoice and then given to Naturescape.
So do we have a bottom line what Naturescape owes us, Jamie? Is this the only 2 invoices that we transferred from 5 Diamonds to Naturescape? I'm trying to get a handle on numbers.
What's that?
I have to do a calculation real quick because the way it's set up. Okay. The total amount of the 2 that is remaining for Naturescape is the $1,772.63, which were the 2 billings that were in 5 Diamonds billings that were given to them incorrectly.
Did
And
they
that's all
make
that
a,
it outstands for Naturescape.
did they make a payment, Naturescape?
They surely did back in December of 2012 was their last payment, and they were paid in full at the time, until now.
Okay, December of 2012. Now, we virtually moved, of the $1,500, $1,569 on invoice 10045, we have a pending $162.50 from 5 Diamonds. And you had indicated to me this was moved to Naturescape, $1,400. It was moved after they paid it? I don't understand that.
Because at the time after he had come in to build that, it was the clarification at the time, so it was moved at that time because the clarification from the engineer was given.
Okay, I have one more invoice, 10081, please.
Okay, Five Diamonds paid $109.49 of that bill, and the remaining is the $675, which is the Gagey Kobe bill.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Call question, please.
John,
Supervisor,
point. I think in order that I feel comfortable with this, and I know where you're coming from, it's time we put the axes down and make this work. That's what this board is about. And those folks out there, as well as some folks over here, don't like this sort of thing. Now, to help me get through this, once again, my duty is to watch our checkbook. I bring that up and I bring it up again. I would appreciate any history on this, any information, more so than we have, to move forward and come to an agreement, if you will. And by that, I can see that Angie is very much in audience, pew number 1. I believe she could shed some things for us to help understand some of the history better and make a decision that is based on help.
I appreciate that. I'm not interested in anything that former Chairwoman Van Sock has to add to this conversation. We are moving on without further debate. The question was called. Please call the roll.
sure.
The motion so that everyone knows.
Supervisor Bansky asked for Mr. Bryant to pay the $3,000 and the town, and the town to pay the difference, which would be
610437 minus 3,000, so 310437.
3104.37. And with that, also the town attorney to draft a mutual release to both parties. Okay. Supervisor Fisher.
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf.
No.
Supervisor Bansky.
Yes.
Supervisor Laska.
No,
Chairman Marek.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving on to the land use amendment. This was tabled back a couple months ago to a date certain in September. The zoning has been approved by both the town board and unanimously recommended by the town plan commission. This is the last step in getting all of this put behind us so that we can send the zoning and the land use amendment over to the county of Waukesha for their approval.
Make a motion to accept the plan commission's recommendation and move the land use amendment to the county.
Second.
Please call the roll.
discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we last visited this issue, one of the issues that I really am curious about is this plan of operation and the CUP and where our enforcement falls into place now, if in fact this land use amendment takes place. Attorney Hector, can you refresh mine,
Yeah,
perhaps other?
I'm sorry, Mike, we're voting on a land use amendment. We are not revisiting plan of operation. That's not on the agenda. We're visiting a land use amendment vote, and that is it. That, nothing else is on the agenda.
Yeah, but the plan of operation has something to do with the land use.
No. A land use amendment is part and parcel by itself.
We addressed the plan of operation with the rezoning, which was approved by this board. That's when it was addressed. That's over and done.
Any further discussion? Please reread the motion and call the roll.
The motion was to approve the land use amendment as stated by the plan commission.
I'll put in the exact date.
Supervisor Fisher?
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf?
No.
Supervisor Bansky?
Yes.
Supervisor Laska?
No,
Chairman Marek?
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving on, 6E. 2013-2014 Class A fermented malt beverage license and Class A liquor license for Walmart Stores East, Inc. Lease Spooty Agent, South 14, West 22, 605 Coral Drive.
Make a motion to approve.
Sure, but can we just make that motion once we have the set date? We don't have payment, so we'll make it to the payment one.
Yes, subject to them.
Thank you.
Hey, there we go.
Supervisor Fisher, agree with that?
You gotta accept my adjustment. Certainly do. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 2013-2014 cigarette and tobacco licenses for Walmart Stores East, South 14, West 605 Coral Drive.
Motion to approve subject to all their approval.
That one's good.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. G, Waukesha County Recycling Program, an overview of the recycling program. And municipal yard waste and processing agreement, do we have? Sure, we do have a representative from Waukesha County here, and I apologize for keeping you here so late this evening. We've got in our packets, basically this is your slideshow of.
So that was what was presented to the Cooperation Council in the July meeting, based on what is happening right now with the new recycling processing. So we went out to bid, there's a RFP out on the street right now for single stream processing marketing. That's a joint effort with the city of Milwaukee that we're taking on. And so it's out in the street, we should come back in October, decisions will be made November, early December. There's 3 parts to the RFP. One is that companies could bid on coming into the city of Milwaukee facility and doing another public-private partnership, such as what we have right now in our Waukesha County MRF. So the public, the public building and owned by the public, private operator, same thing would happen except operations would go down to the city of Milwaukee. Option B would be that we would go to a private already existing MRF, or option C would be that a new MRF would be built somewhere that in the proximity that would be equidistant to everybody. So there's 3 options in the RFP. What we're recommending for the town right now, since you guys are in this, we're all in this transition right now. So moving from our dual stream processing to a single stream processing. With that also comes opportunity for change with your hauling. And so until we know exactly what's gonna happen and how the processing system's gonna work, where it's gonna be processed, by whom, how much that processing is gonna cost, the transfer of those materials, we would recommend that you would all just extend your current contract as it is until the end of next year, which what we'll be doing in an October 17th meeting this year, October 17th, is coming back to a community meeting, bringing everybody back on the table and saying, here's what we're doing, hopefully we'll have some answers by then about where we'll be and what processing system we'll be in. At that time, we'd like to get you on board to consider a coordinated hauling contract where we have the economy scale with all of our partners coming in, all 25 municipalities coming in together to do an economy scale for coordinated hauling for the new processing. So we'll move to the carts, possibly every other week. Is the town curbside, or you guys have to drive?
We're both
Both.
curbside.
Unless you pay.
If you pay, they'll come up your driving.
Okay. So, again, part of the whole coordinated hauling too is that we would break up services, so that there could be better competition on the bids, that everybody gets an opportunity for that. So right now, what we're saying is that we don't know what to tell you to spec out in your hauling contract bid. Therefore, if you can, extend your current contract to the end of 2014. Consider coming to the October meeting, listening to the county, maybe jumping on board with coordinated hauling, or subsequently, if you didn't want to do that, you could potentially rebid yourself next year.
And I apologize, I didn't get your name.
Rebecca Matano.
A couple of real quick questions, Ms. Matano. So are we in your recycling program now?
Absolutely.
And once we're in, we can no longer opt out. Is that accurate?
Technically, there's no method via the DNR to opt out once you're in via resolution to a responsible unit.
Okay. And with single stream, I think we garnered someplace around $47,000 in recycling fees that came back to us last year. With single stream, do we expect that to go up, down, stay the same?
Ideally, what a conservative estimate that came in through our studies and consultants was a 25% increase. So ideally, with the 96-gallon cart, every other week, more materials collected, we expect a minimum of a 25% increase. But that's, again, as we roll this out. So we would expect to see that within the first 2 years of operation. So it wouldn't be an immediate increase, but yes.
And that's because it's just easier for me as a homeowner to take all of my recyclables and toss them into one bin and not worry about separation and so forth. You guys take care of that at Milwaukee County?
Well, that would be where the facility would be located if option A was selected in the RFP. And so yes, that's one. Two is that instead of the 18-gallon, you're gonna have a 96-gallon, so you'll be able to put more stuff in. So a lot of times what happens too, once you have that 18-gallon full, things start going in the other things, or in the other garbage or something like that. So one, you have a bigger bin. Two, we're gonna collect 1-7s. So we're gonna collect all bottle, non-bottle, rigids, mixed rigids, cartons, newspaper, cardboard. So everything will be able to be collected 1 through 7 in that larger 96-gallon container. So not only would you see an increase in recycling, what we're hoping, we would also be able to, on the hauling side, there would be consideration that with the larger 96-gallon recycling, you could also then coordinate the automated system of your solid waste, go to an every other week collection system, and also save money on hauling. So you would automated every other week, so you would increase your recycling rates and decrease your hauling costs. So the whole
These new containers, those cost estimates are $30 to $50 a container. We'd be looking in the town of Waukesha on the high end of somewhere around $176,000.
Oh, no,
Is
no.
there, so I was gonna ask you, what's the plan for that?
So as part of, an agreement will come out to all of our partners that the county, as we've always given the blue bins to our partners free of charge, we would continue that, but it would be a one-time kind of situation where we would buy the carts for all of the municipalities. So we would put forth that $5 million investment to purchase a cart for each household in our partnering communities. We would also agree to purchase carts for new households in each participating municipality for a period of 10 years. And then we would also offer exchanges on a limited basis, and we would work with the haulers for that. So be it like, for example, if somebody gets a 96-gallon cart, but they're an up the drive and they need a 32-gallon container, we would work with municipalities to make that one-time switch for them.
The distribution method, the hauler would be responsible for dropping those off. They'd all come to town hall and we'd have to have.
What do you want to do? No, I'm just kidding. We would actually, we're gonna have to put out bid for the carts. Through that bid, I will arrange that it'll be in each household delivery. There's really no other logistical way, so it'll just be on that.
And the recommendation to renew our waste hauling, are you basing that recommendation off of the likelihood that there'll be more contractors to bid for the separation of the waste hauling and the recyclables, and that's what you are saying to the municipalities, there'll be some savings potentially?
That is part of it. That's one aspect, and another aspect is just, with the county going through this transition with you, I wanna make sure that I give you all the information you need to put the specs in your hauling to get the best hauling price. Right now, I can't give you every spec you might need or want. And so therefore, I recommend you just extend, because we're gonna stay where we're at least in the short term, at least through next year. We plan the rollout to be January 1, 2015. We plan everybody to have parts, everybody be ready to go, and it makes sense if you could do a 1-year extension than to do that rollout with us, and your hauling contract goes along with that.
Okay, thanks.
With our contract coming due, will it hurt us to do more than a 1 year? Or you're just saying stay put for 1 year till everything's ironed out?
I'm saying if you can, ideally, if you are willing to extend until December 31st, 2014, that will put you in a better position to know the exact specs you need to put in your hauling contract and go out to bid for it, or bid with the county in a coordinated hauling.
Coordinated hauling, are you talking about a regional waste hauling contract that we could participate in?
Yes, so part of what the county would offer along with this is, because hauling is probably the largest expense that you all face with recycling and solid waste. And so with that understanding, the county's offering to hire a consultant, have that consultant draft essentially for all of our partners and potentially county facilities, an RFP. And within that RFP, and I know this has been attempted in the past, but we do have a different, I'm definitely looking at it through different eyes and a different approach on how we would do this. And the idea is that we would break things up, so if the drive service would be a group, curbside service would be a group, county facilities would be a group, however we needed to break it up. And through that process, we would hopefully get more competition, because there would be opportunity to bid on each group individually, bid on the whole thing, however it needs to happen. You're gonna have haulers that are not gonna bid on up the drive services. They're not going to do it. And we've seen that be the larger issue, so we believe that separating that out and bringing everybody in, but separating out these different specs of services will give us the best economy of scale and the most competition in the bidding process.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank you very much.
are we gonna do compost next? Are we stay?
Stay right there. I'll go away.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, there's a contract that you guys potentially, it's in your packet. And this one's deadline's October something. Well, we would wanna get the agreement signed sooner rather than later. I don't have a drop dead deadline for it. The new site becomes operational on November 1. Our old site ends October 31st, and in order to start using the new site November 1, which is the latest site operation time date, you have to have that agreement executed. And it's just an agreement, it's not a contract, you're not required to bring the materials there, but you are required, if you want to use the site, to have that agreement executed. So, and I know the town of Waukesha does use our compost site. Last year was about 364 tons were brought into the Waukesha County site. I don't have all of your history, but I think that that's probably a good average for you to go off of.
You're here tonight to tell us with a straight face that Purple Cow Organics LLC is really an entity?
I am here to tell you that, yes.
Okay.
And they have several good references. They do the city of Wauwatosa. They do several large municipal contracts in the Matson area, so yes. And they have a great product. And this is a good example too of a coordinated contract type of situation that that works with the county. So we coordinated this bid, and we'll house the contract. It'll be a little different, but we'll house the contract with Purple Cow, but it allowed us to get a $12 per ton processing, which is lower than the current processing we have. So currently we were paying $13.33. Through doing this bid and putting it as an economy of scale, we were able to get the $12 a ton. We'll house it, we'll have an agreement with you to use the site. We'll send them that information on what municipalities will be part of the site, so.
I have to ask a rather ignorant question. Do we have this contract currently?
Yes. There's
How does-
currently, in the current contract, you are required to bring your material to our county site because it was at the gravel pit site, so it was a combination of a mining and recovery operation, a reclamation operation. So this is gonna be a little bit different it's just an agreement saying if you want to use the site, you can. If there ever comes a time that you choose to do something else, you're able to make those decisions. It's also, if you look at the last page, it's a cost sharing agreement. And I'm assuming you probably don't remember, but 10 years ago, when you signed the original agreement to be part of the compost program, or the yard waste program, you had agreed to pay $7.50 a ton. The county was able to obtain some recycling efficiency incentive grants at that time. Those grants were continued to be obtained up until about 2009, I believe was the last year. So those grants have been stockpiled and that money has been set aside for specifically composting and yard waste. So no municipalities had to pay into this program, anything besides their hauling to get their yard waste from their town residents to our compost site. We paid for all the processing. We will continue to pay for the processing for the next 2 years, and then we'll subsequently cost share based specifically on your tonnage. So if you see the chart, it says 7,000 tons. That's 7,000 tons from all of our partners that do it. So just giving you a big picture, if your tonnage is 300, you would cost share on your 300 tons.
So when Veolia takes our yard waste, they're bringing it over to you now? That's where it goes.
So it goes for now, and it'll go a few miles down the road starting November 1.
Are you kind of like We Energies, our only choice?
Absolutely not. You guys could go out and you could bid out your yard waste processing on your own. You could talk with your hauler, especially if it's ADS, about processing and how much that charge would be. So it's definitely not your only option. I would say it's a good deal. The $12 a ton is a good deal, not having to pay for a few years and then only paying 2, 4, 6 subsequently years after. So I do believe that it's probably the best price you're gonna get for processing of your materials, but you don't have to take my word.
Well, Mr. Johnson is in the back. He represents Advanced Disposal, and his head is moving like a Brewer bobblehead back and forth. Is that, it sounds like that's a pretty good pricing from your standpoint? Is that?
Free is always the best you can get, so I'll leave it at that.
And again, I can't stress enough that executing this agreement doesn't require you to do anything. It doesn't require you to bring it, it just allows you to. So once the site becomes operational, we'd like to have everybody signed up before that, so we can tell the operator who's a part of this program and who's not, and they can adjust their plan of operations for that.
In the future, when you begin to charge us for our pro rata share of the waste that we bring there, and we find that Mr. Johnson opens up a waste disposal for a facility for yard waste, and his fee is cheaper, can we then opt out? Are we not,
You
are
don't
we
even
bound
have
to
to
you?
take any formal action to do that.
Okay.
This agreement just allows you to bring material.
Okay.
You're not guaranteed, you're not required, there's no real stipulation to it. It's just if you agree to do it, you're gonna agree to follow the protocol for using the site and agreeing to cost share if you use it in that time frame.
This is open-ended as to time then? This
We have a
agreement?
10-year contract with Purple Cow.
Okay.
So that 10-year contract actually starts now and will go through 2023, sorry.
I make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign this agreement on behalf of the town of Waukesha.
Second.
Any further discussion? I have one question. Is there significance behind Purple Cow?
You know, I asked them the same thing, and it's gone through several name changes, and I really don't have a good answer.
Fair enough. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
On to H, refuse and recycling contract. As I mentioned, Mr. Johnson from Advanced Disposal is here with us this evening. I guess the question is, do we wish to follow the recommendation of the County of Waukesha and extend our contract with Advanced for next year or beyond?
Can I make a couple of comments?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks again for taking this up. What Rebecca said, there's a lot of truth to her presentation. But, you know, one thing to keep in mind, your current contract already calls for us to process the recycling through the county. We bring that material to them. You're right now the labor, or the residents are, with the dual stream. So changing it to single stream doesn't affect you at all. In terms of parceling it out, who has up the drive, who doesn't, your curbside, people are bringing it down, doesn't affect you, you're already in position. Your people are used to the carts, it's really not gonna be a big change. In terms of the increase in participation, I think there's a little bit of a difference in philosophy. I don't know how, you know, what their numbers specifically, I haven't gone through all 200 pages of the RFP of theirs yet, but you folks have weekly recycling already. Just because the 18-gallon bin fills up, I'm sure some of you may be putting it in a paper bag, clear plastic bags. We don't leave it behind. It doesn't get thrown into the garbage. We're taking it. Your recycling participation, I would be very surprised if it went on more than 10%. In terms of the values, how they market it, once all of these recyclable materials are put together, you may see, you know, a higher rebate value. With that participation, I don't know, that's pure speculation. In terms of the economies of scale and bidding the entire county out, Rebecca said it was tried in the past, it didn't work out. Some of the options are to build a facility in Milwaukee, hopefully equidistant. Obviously, when it comes to trucking costs, you know, you guys might be a little bit better, but as you get further west, if the trucking has to go that way, I don't know, you know, it's hard to say how the bids are all going to shake out. What we do know is what we've put in front of you as an extension, basically where you can make some financial savings. We keep the fuel surcharge out, which is an industry standard at this time. We're absorbing those costs. We're giving you some immediate relief with the tax, with the budget levy limits and now fee limits. This is a chance for the county to get some savings on their own, or excuse me, for the town to get some immediate savings on their own. The contract, again, calls for the processing by the county. That's not gonna change. We would still bring it to the county, but you have the opportunity, this board, to make sure that your residents don't see an increase, and to hope that in the future, if there is a conglomerate of bidding, it may or may not work out in your favor. What I put in front of you, it's clear, it does work out in your favor. And with the up the drive, again, you guys, you know, the town residents, they pay for that as it stands. Brookfield, they have up the drive, so there's some discussions. Those residents don't want to give up that service. And also, waste and recycling contracts is the one that we have with you. They're tied together. We have contracts that extend, that are already in place out to 2015, 2016, 2017. So to get all of these to coordinate together, there's some waiting that's gonna have to take place. So I would again look at the financials. We've given the town a chance to save money. It's not changing anything. It's not forcing you out of the county's plan. I think they've got a great plan coming up with single stream. I'm not against it. But I think you have an opportunity to get some savings, to look at your budget and be able to build a budget over the next 3 to 5 years. Say, here's what we're gonna pay. I think that's a very compelling fact. And then I'll answer any other questions.
I have a quick question, Mr. Johnson. When single stream does get implemented in the coming years, and you're gonna have the same truck hauling regular waste and recyclables,
It'd be a different truck.
it's
But
still
it'd be the same style, but not the same truck. They can't carry trash and recycling.
less Less labor perhaps?
That's the goal, yeah,
Okay.
with the automated services, again, for your community, you have the carts for trash, so your residents are gonna like the carts, there's no doubt about it, I think, I mean, you haven't had the blowback on carts as it is, so I think your residents are gonna like it. But you're also, most likely, for a cost standpoint, you're gonna convert to every other week, that's what the county's envisioning, that's what we would envision, because now you do have a bigger container. But again, we take all of your recycling now. I mean, I fill up my 95-gallon bin. When I used to have an 18-gallon bin, I filled it up, and I had a competitor because of where I live, but, you know, they took it all, and we take it all as well. So that nothing really changes except the container you would put it in.
So come 2015, when you've got a more automated system for grabbing both the regular?
Well, we have the automated system now. We could put out carts, but now, reading more of the RFP and understanding it, sounds as if the county is now gonna supply the carts, so I wouldn't talk to us about switching into the
No.
recycling
No,
that way.
that's not where I'm going.
Okay.
Come 2015, once
Yep.
you have a lower labor cost because you've got carts for both the recyclables and carts for the regular waste, could we be looking at a cost savings at that point?
There is that potential, there is that potential, because of the reduced service. Again, there's gonna be some variables, as Rebecca mentioned, there's 3 options as to where this MRF would be located. One of the options is basically to take over both of them and run them. So if we can come out less often, I would say it's a good sense that you're gonna get some cost savings.
So,
And that's in your contract now, that if it changes, we would take a look at, you know, where we take it, what our trucking costs are, and that's something that the current contract calls to negotiate.
So if we were in a multi-year contract then with you, and because of single stream and lower labor costs of you, we can renegotiate
We
that
would
contract?
Yes, we would come
Okay.
to a negotiation on the recycling portion of it. That is correct.
Rebecca, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, that the Waukesha County MRF right now will become a transfer station, and that, so your trucking will not change, so that's not a consideration or a concern that the town should have. And also, with the single stream, not only will you be automated, but you should be able to go to every other week pickup service for that. So that, those are some other factors you should be thinking about as they're saying you can renegotiate.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Johnson?
What about large pickup?
I don't think any of the other services
Nothing-
change. It'll
nothing
all
would
still be
change
on
in
the
our
fourth
service.
So we would still
Friday.
get that once a month.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with in your contract where it describes that we can renegotiate with you?
I did not bring an exact copy of it, but I know that language is in there with all of our contracts with our Waukesha County partners. I can't speak to exactly where it is, but.
Verbiage that speaks to the ability to renegotiate. If we do move on extending this contract, I would say that it would be based on the ability to renegotiate, making sure that it is in the contract someplace. I'm sure it is if you say.
I'm
that it
pretty,
is.
I'm 99%,
I'm almost positive I saw it in there.
I've been wrong 1%.
We don't see it, but perhaps you can forward that to us tomorrow with the language highlighted.
We can make sure it's highlighted. Might be under the disposition of recyclables or recycling processing.
Are we prepared to move forward with an extension of the contract?
Might, Chairman Marek, we're on to, kind of moved into H now, have we, I take it? Might we, for that, might we simply have Attorney Delamore, I see H, Supv, there is possible extension of current contract with clarification from town attorney. I think we've seen communication on that, but I wonder if Attorney Delamore would simply briefly summarize your opinion on that for us, please.
Basically, under town ordinances and state statute, the town does not have to bid out its waste hauling services, and for that matter, recycling services.
Thank you.
I didn't see it.
I've looked at so many over the past couple of days, I may have mixed it up, so I could have swore it was in there. But we've been insured within there because there has to be a clause that states that we take it to Waukesha County, so that's why I'm surprised at that.
But, so is it your representation then that the only time that that kind of a, because it says contractor must deliver all recyclables collected to Waukesha County materials recycling in two separations coming from paper? Is that,
I
so are
would've
you
thought it
saying
would've
that
been in
if
there,
there's a
but-
change strictly in the location or something, then?
Just simply, yeah, because we don't pay any processing charges, we don't receive any of the rebates that we would share. Those go directly to, it's simply a trucking cost. And it could be underrated.
She's saying we're not gonna, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but she's saying we're not going to see a destination change because the plan, she being Rebecca, sorry, the plan is that this is still going to be the transfer station then. So the likelihood of us through
Having to
ADS
exercise it
seeing
would not-
any type of a 2015 renegotiable contract is probably not a reality.
By the sounds of it, then, yeah.
No, what I was talking about is the savings from single
Physically,
stream.
the truck, because now
The
you're
only-
saving.
The only
Yes.
savings you could potentially see from us would be, and I may have misunderstood in reading it, but in the three options, that it may be one terminal that it would be brought to, but it doesn't sound like that's the case.
But going from.
But going from weekly to every other week, there would be a potential savings, and we would negotiate with the board. In terms of the value of the recyclables, that's nothing to us, but for the every other week, that is something that we would negotiate, and
I'd be inclined.
I look at the rates.
I'd be inclined to support looking at a 3-year extension, given the fact that we're talking about, Rebecca, if I heard you correct, we're talking about like a 2015 January launch date.
Right.
So we're effectively talking about roughly a 2-year, let's call it, window that we could be settled. But I'd like to read the language that would say that we could enter into a renegotiation if we do go to a every other week pickup with a 96-gallon tub of recyclables. And I don't see that anywhere here. I don't know how you could, how do you approve something and
We've
then don't
seen
see what's in it?
a lot of them, I think I may have mentioned on the last one, but a lot of them will draft, we'll have our legal department draft upon that contingency. And we've seen, actually, I would say almost all of them, if you remember my comment, to draft 3 different versions, not knowing what would be approved. I'd say the majority of the time, we draft it based on the proposal from our legal department with any contingencies that you would put. and your contingency would be subject to town attorney approval. That's not anything to do with what we do.
If you're considering a 3-year extension, that's nothing that I would wanna review the contract again and make sure that the language in there with regards to renegotiation is there, and then look at the fees again, and spend some time on it. And I would, wait until our next time that we gather here before making any move on that.
I would certainly support deferring taking action on it. My preliminary sense, and I want to listen to the discussion, see all the information, my preliminary sense or preference would be for a 1-year extension, but I'm certainly willing to wait and look at more information, hear the arguments.
So I guess, can you get us a contract? Sorry. That-
Well, I guess again, it would be what,
I would
what
want to
would
see,
be the,
personally, I would want to see a 3-year contract with either a preset reduction
Well, yeah,
in
we would-
price, if we
yeah.
go to a bi-weekly pickup instead of an every week
that
pickup.
we couldn't do because we don't know ultimately when.
At the time that we commence.
Yeah, I can't give you the price as to what it would be in 2015, in 2017.
Language in there that says,
I mean, we would have the language that
contract
says
could be
that
renegotiated
Yeah,
at the
that-
time that we want to change the structure of the service. to
100%,
bi-weekly,
yes, we would
But the
definitely-
entire contract
yes.
could be then renegotiated.
we would renegotiate the recycling portion of the contract.
Is that
The
kind of
trash,
puts a gun
nothing,
to-
yeah, the
that
trash,
kind of puts a gun to work, because you're already, unless we go to the separated services and have somebody else come in and pick up the recyclables then. But
well, that's what I said earlier. Everywhere in the county that I know of, would be the spot, but everyone has trash and recycling. If it's privatized, those contracts are tied together. There's not any that are separate. But, you know, that's what I was saying, depending on if you wanted to make the motion on a 3-year, contingent upon the rates, renegotiated for the recycling portion, we can definitely do that. And obviously, if that motion's approved, the town attorney approves the language, then you have the legal binding document. There's some legalese that I'm not an attorney, so I'm not gonna profess to be, but in terms of the financial offer and the spirit of what is negotiated in our proposal, we were hoping that the board, after the third appearance, that you could come to that agreement to say, here's the proposal based on the negotiating that we've done and listened to, draft a contract based on X, Y, or Z. With your approval, then it would be submitted to the town attorney, and he would sign off and say, yep, this, the legal makes sense, this is the spirit of the negotiation of their proposal, and then it would be signed, and you can move on to other pressing board matters.
Mr. Johnson, under the assumption that come 2016, we'll just pick a date, that single stream is in full force and you're still our garbage collection company, and the savings that we are experiencing from Advanced is not what we can get through pick any other hauler. And is our contract not just negotiable but cancelable if you won't meet or beat somebody else's numbers at that point?
Explain that again.
So if we experience, if you're experiencing significant savings through single stream, and perhaps another hauler is willing to give us an even lower price on that, and you don't meet that price, is our contract cancelable so that we could move into another hauler?
No,
So just the recycling portion is.
it would just be the recycling component, and on you, yeah, that would be the one line item. When we break it out, we have the trash line item, the recycling line item. We would break out that recycling line item and renegotiate that portion.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm going to go with Supervisor Bansky, look at this a bit differently, but need to see some specific language. I mean, where I'm not, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but real comfortable. I don't know what, or I get concerned about a contract that says we'll put language in there that we will be contractually bound to renegotiate. I mean, from the town standpoint, I don't know where that leaves us. All that is simply a commitment, we're gonna talk, and if we don't agree, I mean, that wouldn't leave me comfortable at all, simply a commitment to renegotiate, well, we couldn't come to terms. I mean, where's the town at?
And I can supply another municipal document that shows that language, and I'm sure the town attorney, if he handles other municipalities, may have seen them, depending on his involvement with those other contracts, but we do have those.
The teeth would have to, the only time that there's teeth in a scenario like that is if they don't meet or beat, then you have some negotiating.
Of course.
Right.
And again, with the cart, we would see a reduction in truck traffic, so it'd be a pretty difficult, and I understand where you're coming from, Supervisor Fisher. It'd be a pretty hard legal burden and political burden for us to cross if we had the opportunity to reduce our truck traffic by 50%, but wanted to raise the rates. But I do understand where you're coming from.
There's nothing on the table.
Oh, I thought you made a motion.
No, I said I could support a 3-year,
Oh, I
but
thought
I'd have
you
to
made
know
a-
what this language would look like, which is, I think, what Brian is saying, and, I mean,
I would move that we table this to the next board meeting, and at that time, hopefully we'll have a contract with that language in there.
Can you give some direction as to, I mean, again, we can have our attorneys drafted. I go back to the zoning questions and time, legal time and have it.
Three.
Okay, I will, Chairman.
Sure.
Mr. Johnson, if my recollection serves me correctly, the last time you were here, I was left with the impression that you would be getting sample contracts to us. And I never did receive any such contracts.
We did get them.
Three one-page addendums that were provided.
We got them.
Yeah, we got
But those weren't forwarded along.
For all three possibilities?
A 1 year, 3 year, and a 5 year.
This
Yes.
is the last one.
Okay, so
The last thing I'd hope to see would be the language that says that the renegotiation language. That's what.
Yeah, that's a new topic.
Okay. All right.
And again, I'm gonna take a look at it because hard to believe that's not in there, but all the other ones we have. It could be heading somewhere else in rate adjustments, language like that, regardless.
You got a first and a second, I think. You didn't get a first? I thought you said I'd make a motion.
I would make a motion, but I don't think I got.
Instead of making a motion.
I would make a motion that we table it to a date certain of our next town board meeting and review the contract with the specific language of the renegotiation ability.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yep.
Appointment of an individual for administrative determinations review pursuant to ordinance 4-1-8 sub B. We have we need to move off topic for just a moment. We're gonna, there was a letter sent to us by a resident that wanted to be read in during public comments. And we're gonna read that now.
This is from Mr. Mike Borchardt, and I don't have his address. He is in the town of, West 231, South 5205, Hunters Hollow. To all current members of the Waukesha Town Board, first, I would like to thank all the members of the town board for their time and service. As a concerned citizen of the town of Waukesha, I have been trying to attend as many meetings as possible. I attended the 2 previous town board meetings and was disappointed by the lack of progress being made on some of the current issues, especially the town hall septic sewer problem. I'm also disappointed and disturbed by the petty bickering between the board members. Any and all personal differences between the board members must be put aside for the good of the community. The current issues at hand are not rocket science. If a board member is assigned or volunteers to take on a particular project, that person must be persistent in getting the information and answers needed to provide to proceed forward with the particular project. If anyone has a problem getting the answers and information needed, then they should let the other board members know and ask for some assistance. 2 heads are always better than 1, that is a fact. If any of the board members had a problem at their home, I am sure they would be persistent in getting that problem solved ASAP, as I know I would. I believe it would be helpful for all board members to add a copy of any bids or proposals related to the town, services, or projects, so everyone could review together. All I'm asking is that the board members work together as a team in dealing with the town issues and problems. I remind everyone that there is no I in the word team. If any of the board members have any questions or comments they would like to share, Jamie can give you my email address or cell phone number, which is on 24/7. I know from personal experience that these problems are not that difficult to solve. One more request is that all board members speak loud enough so everyone in the room can hear what is being said. It is a public meeting, everyone present is interested in what is being said. Thank you for allowing me to address the board. I will be present at the September 26th meeting and hope that some positive progress has been made of the current issues. Sincerely, Mike Borchert.
Thank you. Back on schedule, I, appointment of an individual for administrative determinations review pursuant to ordinance 4-1-8 sub B, and that is an appointment that I'm making, and it's going to be Bob Flanagan. There is no board action or review that needs to be taken on that. On to J, request from resident Janet Glade for reconsideration of the plan of operation for Walgreens. This is a contentious issue that Ms. Glade is most certainly the one that is most directly affected, is concerned about losing the buffer that she currently has in buffering town residents from the city, and the concern of what else would be built on that property. It is currently rezoned to a business district. It is not ever going to be homes again, and we could end up with, it could very easily end up being annexed into the city. You could end up with a bar, a tavern, uses that would be far more intrusive, and a developer that would be far less accommodating than the MRED Corporation has proved to be over the last number of years that they've been dealing with the town of Waukesha. And I think it's incumbent upon us to take into consideration the resident who is most directly affected, and the new information that we have regarding the residents that are surrounded by this development that are not opposed to moving forward with the request of the developer and the Walgreens Corporation as well as the Aldi's Corporation.
Mr. Chairman, I move to suspend the rules so we can continue to discuss this agenda item.
I'll second that. Go ahead.
Chairman Marek,
Yes.
Supervisor Wolf,
No.
Supervisor Fisher,
Yes.
Supervisor Bansky,
No.
Supervisor Laska.
No.
Motion failed.
On to K, update on the status of the town of Waukesha Town Hall on-site sewage disposal system. Mike?
I am very happy to announce that we are moving along with the city's fathers. The Board of Public Works approved the extension of the water services to the town hall without annexation. Now, the recommendation will go in front of the Common Council, which will meet on September 17th, which is Tuesday, and I shall be present and report the outcome Wednesday morning, bright and early. In addition, the DPW Board of the city directed their director, Fred, Dr. Fred as he is known, to a little research to discuss particular items with the city attorney. Now, I don't know how that's going to affect our timetable, but it may have an effect. Don't know. Okay. The city attorney will contact Chairman Marek, depending on the results of Fred's research. Dr. Fred, you don't have anything? Apparently he's gonna be calling you. All right. All right, if there's anything that we can do to parallel and track the city's administrative process in order to have plans specifically developed and move more quickly, Fred's recommendation to us was not to work until things are settled administratively. In other words, don't work until the 17th of September.
When did Fred say that?
September 9th, September 8th, after the DPW meeting, John? The board, the DPW meeting of the city, he's the director.
I know, I was at that meeting, if
Well,
you
that's
weren't
what I-
aware. He did not say that at that meeting.
well,
Where did you get that information?
I got it from our very capable town engineer, Chris Janelle.
You know, that was not said at that meeting. That's absolutely incorrect.
All right.
I was there for that meeting.
Okay, so, on the Wednesday, Wednesday the 18th, we will be contacting the engineering staff or whoever we need to contact. For what it's worth, we are waiting for the green light. And when we get the green light, we will be giving requirements that are necessary for us to go forward. Without those requirements, much like Dr. Fred had indicated, no point in us going forward. It's slowing this process down. We've had a lot of meetings, a lot of different departments that had to go through. That's the issue. Had no control over that, and the city.
Excuse me, Mike, what requirements are we?
We don't know that yet, John.
You said we're waiting for certain requirements. What are
It
they?
has to go beyond the council. The council will dictate with the powers of what requirements we will need, whether it be the size of the main, how far we have to extend the sewer, anything and everything that they dictate to us. Okay? And that is my report as we sit today on this beautiful evening.
So you've got nothing else done?
Thank you.
It's-
Apparently you didn't hear me so well.
You've done nothing. The city.
Did that bring Mark when you did
The
the grenade?
city
No kidding.
is moving
Get that?
forward. You have done nothing.
The city,
We're gonna move
It's
on to
holding
the
up the show.
Waukesha County Sheriff's.
I said, the city is
contract.
holding up the show. Thank you.
You're out of order. We're moving on to
Oh,
Waukesha.
you are
County.
out of
The
order,
city-
sir.
Ma'am, you're out of order. If you do it again, I'm calling the sheriff and having you removed. I'm not gonna put up with it anymore.
No, we hear you.
Ma'am, if you don't silence yourself, the next phone call's to the sheriff. You've all got a copy of the sheriff's contract. It's a 4-year contract.
This is how we have cooperation and civility in here.
There is no civility in this room, unfortunately, ma'am. Thank you.
But there is a call.
It's a 4-year contract. Has anybody had an opportunity to review the contract? Are you prepared to move forward on it?
I'm not, and I'd make a motion to table it to our next
I'll
meeting.
second it.
All in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? Motion carries.